A warm welcome, dear viewers, to our series Natural Medicine. Today my guest is movement scientist Karl Müller and we'll talk about a very special path, namely therapy instead of surgery. And today you will find out how it works. Stay tuned. Hello, dear Karl, nice that you are here.
Hello, Corina.
We've already had a few interviews. You have developed a very special shoe, and for the viewers who don't know you yet, maybe you can briefly describe in a few words what this special shoe is all about.
This shoe, the Carbon Joyer shoe, has a soft, elastic springy sole. As a result, the floor no longer feels hard, but just soft elastic, and you walk and stand like on a trampoline.
And because of that, I can also speak a bit from my own experience, because I also have your shoes, especially when I'm running or jogging. It's sort of like a correction. You feel like you're getting longer and more stable and straighter, where you often actually think when jogging that you're more likely to become crouched if I go jogging in running shoes, for example.
Exactly, when you bounce on a trampoline, you increase your body tension. So the whole neuromyofascial apparatus, the whole chain of muscles, tenses up, and by tensing there is a completely different posture. So it tends to pull apart, because if it bounces again at the bottom, you have to counteract it with your muscles, otherwise you would collapse. And that gives you a different posture, and, above all, these tense muscles act as shock absorbers for the joints and also hold the joints together. Now, especially runners, we often have the issue that at some point there will be knee problems, hip problems, and then there are tendon infections. How do you deal with that when you say that we prefer therapy to surgery? What are the classic options? Well, it's not just the runners. If you look at the old people's homes, almost all of the older people use walkers at some point. Sometimes it starts with a pain in the knees, often in the hips, in the back. And there is a reason for this pain. And now, instead of just fighting the symptom by replacing a meniscus that might be a bit damaged, or a so-called arthrosis, which may have already developed a bit, instead of combating this symptom through the operation and thus also destroying the fascial apparatus, let's get to the root cause. And well, just walk differently. When you have bent the joints, then shear forces arise. If the pelvis is no longer, I can show a few more videos later, if the pelvis is no longer in the upright position, then it becomes overloaded and the first pain arises. When pain arises, relieving postures arise from it. Relieving postures overload other parts that are actually not intended to be loaded. And so there is a vicious circle that gets worse and worse with age. So most people use walkers. You still operate when there is pain. You try to get problems out of the way as quickly as possible, instead of thinking about what to do. What you could do is a very simple method of walking elastically. That's not the end of the story either, but in most cases that's enough to get you free of these problems for several years, or the arthrosis, which is often also diagnosed. When you go to the doctor, they do an examination, an MRI or some type of computed tomography and then find something. And what is found is then operated on. Instead of that, you could just walk differently.
Especially since you often hear that the pain is still there after an operation.
In most cases, immediately after the operation, you hear that it helped. But you don't know what use it was. Sometimes it's also, there were tests, just shutting down the system, the anesthesia, that you have simply sunk all your muscles into a deep sleep so that tension has been released. That alone often helps. A slightly pinched meniscus may have been removed. Then that can help too. But that's not the cause. And these problems could also be a slightly damaged, pinched meniscus. If you take the trouble and also give the time and not just think, now I want to get rid of this immediately, then alone, very, very often alone, the correct walk helps. You also get the videos from us, the right instructions, wearing our Keiben Joyer shoes correctly. And by the way, you can also rent them. 2 weeks for €20, 30 Swiss francs. And then find out for yourself whether it helps or not. Of course, you can't do that with an operation.
No, you definitely can't. So very exciting. But if you really have a problem now, such as the hips, do I have to wear these shoes all the time? Or is there a kind of therapy time?
You will find out for yourself. Of course, it makes sense to wear these shoes as often as possible, so that you can also change the walk pattern. In the walk pattern, it's about that in the brain and in the neuromyofascia inside, these reflexes are adjusted. Of course, only half an hour is not enough, but at the beginning you would wear these shoes the majority of time so that you walk differently in normal shoes later. This means that I also walk with more body tension in the other shoes. More body tension is the key. More upright and more body tension, so that the muscles can act as shock absorbers for the joints.
Super exciting. What kind of video do we have here now?
Here you can see the principle at the top right of this elastic springing. This increases body tension. You can see the two pictures below. The picture on the left, where you can see a normal shoe on a relatively soft, but still a relatively good shoe on the ground, it really shakes those thigh muscles back and forth. That means there's a blow with every step in everyday life on flat floors. Such a strong blow that even the muscles that are supposed to hold and control the joint even get out of control. If you still have an elastic, springy layer between foot and floor, in the Keiben Joyer shoe, so to speak, then the muscles have time to build up and defend themselves against this blow, by tensing up in time.
This also gives the joint around the muscles such stability that the cartilage is also relieved and can replenish itself with nutrients and fluid. Kind of like a sponge effect, isn't it?
Yes, the sponge effect is a good input. And also with the cartilage structure. It's still the majority of doctors who believe that cartilage that's worn out can no longer be built. That's not true at all. There is Wolff's Law. It was invented in 1892. Many numerous studies afterwards have also proved that both bone density as well as cartilage can be rebuilt. Osteoporosis and cartilage degradation are on the one hand a consequence of an overly acidic diet, deficiency of certain vitamins. You might even know better what kind of vitamins. I know vitamin K2, you need vitamin C for example.
Yes, common horsetail and glucosamine and all that. Omega-3. But then you have this arthrosis buildup cure.
Then you have a great environment. If you do this cure, then you have a great environment to build up the cartilage. But in order to build it up, it has to be stressed. That's what Wolff's Law says. Cartilage is then built up, or bone density is then built up, when properly stressed. The problem is also known to wheelchair users, that bone density is weakening because they are not exerting themselves. Then they do their training. The cartilage, when not under load, then it decomposes. Same with the bone. The best training for the knee joints, hip joints, for the spine, also for the intervertebral discs, is just this elastic springy trampolining. If we walk like on the left, then there is also a load, but a shearing load, a bad load, which breaks down the cartilage. If you convert that, this bad load converts into an elastic resilient load, then you rebuild the cartilage. Then no surgery is needed.
If I have someone who is pain-free with the shoe and wants to jog or run, there are also special techniques that I have to take into account, compared to a running shoe. A friend of mine knew your shoes and said you actually walk in short steps. Or is that no longer true?
Yes, generally speaking, the steps are getting a little shorter and faster, especially if you jog. You don't take such long steps and let yourself fall into the step, but you walk more upright. You try to keep your center of gravity high. This is only possible if the body's center of gravity is not going up and down too much, but stays up. Then you can do it with faster, shorter steps. That's correct. We also recommend in our videos if someone has knee arthrosis or hip problems, we recommend interval walking, alternating speeds. Even if you don't jog, just walk, then walk a little faster, walk a little slower. In order to adapt the walk pattern, it is important that you also change your speed. All of this is part of the package, of course, alternative to surgery. We look after our customers there too. Through videos, the whole website is structured like that.
So now that I'm about to have hip surgery, can I call quickly?
Calling is the last option, because we have a very good guide through various videos, where you can finally rent the shoes. And there you are very well introduced via videos and guided about what you should do. Interval walking is one thing. And the other thing, if you are about to have the operation, you should also do fascia training. We also offer that there. Fascia training, and certain stretching exercises. I do this every day. At 70, it is that important in old age, that you remain flexible into old age. And mobility is an additional important aspect in this therapy program against operating.
How do I get to this guide? So where can the viewer now find it if they say they want to do it?
On the Kaiban website, kaiban.com, you can select the language, the countries. And then you go to the guide and then knee arthrosis or whatever. There is already a choice on the home page. That you have a health problem, you can click there, then you can click on the problem, and so you find the individual guide for the problem you have.
Now you have 2 pairs of shoes, right? The brands.
Kaiban and Joya.
Yes, exactly. And how do they differ? So one looks a bit more youthful, right? But how is technology different?
Joya is probably a bit more youthful visually, but for us the technique is important. Kaiban also has thinner and thicker ones. For example, now I have the thinner sole. It is then less demanding and looks a little better aesthetically. Joya, these are 3 different ones, more the rolling concept, more stabilizing, where you can also insert an insole temporarily if you are still too unstable and still needs an additional insole while you still need it. There is so much choice in different technologies and also in the looks of models, there is sure to be something there.
Now I had the experience relatively early on. When I was young I was a fitness trainer and gave many courses, but had extreme back problems and at some point went to an orthopedist, who said my legs were different lengths. Of course, when I was young, he said it was a different length than I thought. Well, that can't really be. Then, thank God, I came to a Mongolian who was able to put everything right again and said you don't have different legs and was able to show me that too. But now the question, with this hip shift, it was just something shifted for me. There weren't any legs of different lengths. Can I, if I just have such a bad positioning, really use the shoe so that the body brings itself back into this regulation? I can imagine that very well. Now I've set everything up again and I'm walking straight. But at the time I thought to myself, if you really let yourself be talked into such nonsense at 17 or 18, from my point of view it was like that because it was just wrong, definitely. And it later led to even more problems. I also had hip pain.
Yes, it's sad what is sometimes recommended and done. A so-called functional pelvic obliquity is diagnosed, especially in younger people.
That's exactly what it was called.
A functional pelvic obliquity is where the pelvis is blocked. Because we humans are asymmetrical anyway. We also have halves of the face in terms of appearance. The right hand works differently than the left. We have a jumping leg, a standing leg. We are completely asymmetrical. We may look symmetrical on the surface, but that asymmetry, the standing, often leads to that you stand on one side, the other leg is then pushed into the hip, the other gets longer. And then a compensation sole is made. With this, the apparently different leg length is even cemented, and with that in the long term the pelvis too.
Scheinbar unterschiedliche Beinlänge sogar noch zementiert, damit langfristig das Becken dann
I think they do it to the best of their knowledge and belief, but that's just wrong knowledge, that is there.
ein falsches Wissen, das da vorhanden ist.
Because it's a muscular problem.
Ein muskuläres Problem.
This then leads to scoliosis, and that can bring the whole mechanism.
Eine Skoliose, und das kann den ganzen Mechanismus, den ganzen
The whole frame into a crooked position, which also causes neck problems for the rest of your life, headaches, and so on.
Nackenbeschwerden, Kopfschmerzen und so weiter bereitet. Ja, und jetzt
What we do with this elastic spring walking, we solve, we support it.
Also wir unterstützen das.
Should actually never happen if you wear Kaiben Joya shoes.
Gar nie passieren.
It can still happen because you're one-sided, you're brought more into symmetry by our shoes, but if you were already one-sided, then you still need the Mongolian who then fixes something, the physiotherapist who releases blockages, the chiropractor can do that too.
Halt noch eben den Mongolen, der dann etwas richtet, den Physiotherapeuten, der Blockaden löst, der Chiropraktor kann das auch.
And once it's resolved, and if you then walk on elastic, springy shoes, then this shouldn't happen anymore.
Dann sollte das eigentlich nicht mehr passieren.
Yes, I was also happy that I realized it relatively quickly, that things will go haywire if things continue like this. If I had continued down this path, I would probably have an artificial hip by now.
Yes, knee joint, hip joint.
Kniegelenk, Hüftgelenk, das
The insoles are often other insoles.
sind oft auch andere Einlagen.
Insoles against pronation, against internal buckling, against external buckling, are often the first preliminary stage for the operation, and the next operation is often the preliminary stage for the one after that.
Ist oft die Vorstufe für die übernächste.
So after a left knee, then comes the right hip.
Und das eine, also wenn man
Either you go the way of surgery and you have to know that it's not about combating the causes, but that you simply fight a symptom because you want to get rid of a pain quickly. But then, this is also evident in my gymnastics club friends. Once you started, then at 65, 70 you are completely immobile.
Aber dann es zeigt sich einfach auch bei meinen Turnverein-Kameraden. Wer mal begonnen hat, der ist dann mit 65, 70 komplett unbeweglich.
Yes, and then you can't go skiing anymore. You can't play tennis anymore. That's actually what you look forward to, that you have time for it.
One has worked 2/3 of one's life to enjoy 1/3, because you can still do your favorite sport, tennis or skiing or whatever.
Tennis oder Skifahren oder was auch immer noch machen kann.
And that doesn't work because you started the operation too early.
Operieren begonnen hat.
And of course no orthopedist warns about that, because that's big business.
Weil das ist das große Business. Es
It also eats up a quarter of our total healthcare bill.
unsere gesamten Gesundheitskosten. Das
It's hard to believe, more than cancer.
Krebs, es ist
It's
die
the biggest
größte,
topic in healthcare.
Thematik im Gesundheitswesen überhaupt.
I think it's like 25 or 23% that goes into knee, hip, foot, back surgeries.
Die Knie-, Hüft-, Fuß-, Rückenoperationen verschlucken.
In the public broadcasters in Germany, we also had a documentary about the hip joint business. It was also broken down with numbers, data, and facts. Then I thought, well then, I'd rather have a Kaiben shoe.
Thank you.
Aber ja,
But it's the same if you compare the countries.
die Länder vergleicht.
How healthy people walk in old age.
Menschen im Alter gehen,
In countries where there are fewer surgeries, people walk healthier.
gehen die gesunder.
Those are countries like Italy, Greece, Portugal, if you compare them with Germany and Switzerland.
Vergleich mit Deutschland und der Schweiz.
Germany and Switzerland are world champions in orthopedic operations.
Bei orthopädischen Operationen.
They aren't doing any better.
Besser im Gegenteil.
On the contrary, they are worse off.
Ist doch ein Armutszeugnis
That's an indictment of the orthopedic operations.
orthopädischen Operationen. Also
So nothing against accidents and everything.
alles. Ich hab
I have big
großen
respect.
Mich würde es
I wouldn't exist anymore if there weren't any operations, because I once had to operate on my appendix.
Operationen gäbe, weil ich habe
Then you can really say, must. But a knee joint, if it's just wear and tear, that's what my friends say too. I have to operate. You don't have to do anything. You choose voluntarily. When I had an appendix operation, I made a voluntary and very conscious decision. But for orthopedic surgery, unless it was a serious accident or something, I would try everything else to the last, everything else as I have described, before I would fight any symptom with surgery.
Yes, great. Super exciting. Nice that you were there. And I'm happy. I would like to talk to you again about the topic why people shrink so much with age, become smaller, if we can do something about it. But I would like to invite you again for that. And otherwise, thank you very much for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Corina.
Dear viewers, it's unbelievable what possibilities there are to counteract supposed misalignment or even operations with alternatives. I hope you were able to take something with you too. I wish you a wonderful time and see you soon. Bye.